A political firestorm has erupted as China delivers a sharp rebuke to U.S. Vice President JD Vance following his controversial comments, some would say racial comments, calling the Chinese citizens peasants in a recent Fox News interview. The remarks, which surfaced recently, sent shockwaves through social media, igniting fierce backlash from Chinese citizens. The backlash was swift. Beijing's foreign ministry called these comments ignorant and disrespectful, with officials expressing disbelief over such a misguided statement from an American leader. On Chinese platforms, users mocked Vance, contrasting his description with China's thriving tech-driven economy. That's what they say, whether it's AI or infrastructure. In fact, some even went on to say that they may be peasants, but they're the ones who are actually building high-speed rail. Again, what does this mean? What does this really speak of when it comes to the U.S. Vice President speaking like that? He's facing mounting criticism, as many urge him to look beyond the stereotypes and understand the country he's criticized. As tensions rise, the debate over global perceptions and respect takes center stage in the growing U.S.-China relationship. Before we go any further, I want to play out some of these sound bites that top leaders in Trump administration have made. You've got to hear it before we take this forward.
Ask ourselves, what has the globalist economy gotten the United States of America? And the answer is fundamentally it's based on two principles: incurring a huge amount of debt to buy things that other countries make for us. And to make it a little bit more crystal clear, we borrow money from Chinese peasants to buy the things those Chinese peasants manufacture.
Today, the Panama Canal faces ongoing threats. The United States of America will not allow communist China or any other country to threaten the canal's operation or integrity. To this end, the United States and Panama have done more in recent weeks to strengthen our defense and security cooperation than we have in decades.
No, look, these are obviously two individuals who have very different views on trade and on tariffs. Boys will be boys, and we will let their public sparring continue.
Boys will be boys. So is that really, as I said, unless you hear this, you can't believe what you just heard, isn't it? And that's why the questions that I'm going to put forth are also going to be extremely important. First up, is Vance's offensive really meant to offend? Look at what he's really saying here. Next up, how long will Trump tolerate some of these faux pas that JD Vance has been making? It's not the first one. Remember, he's also been very, very acerbic in Europe as well. Next up, will this further strain relationship? Because remember, these are racial slurs that are coming in not once but several times. And what does White House's boys will be boys comment really signal? You heard that. And that's exactly why this commentary needs to be questioned, needs to be talked about. Professor Andrew Latham joins me to talk more on this. Professor Andrew, as you know, I played out that soundbite because it looks like almost like a pattern. JD Vance seems to be the latest, but it's like a pattern with several of Trump administration making comments that are objectionable, racial, and downright offensive.
Well, boys will be boys, and that's not a good thing. JD Vance is not a fool, and the things he says are not just reflexes. He's thought them through, and the way he has expressed them, I mean, really, Chinese peasants. China is so far up the value-added chain in terms of the thing that this is not China of 1,000 years ago or 100 years ago. This is China in 2025. And so to use that phrase to characterize and to encapsulate a bigger picture that he's trying to paint here, which is that China is messing with the United States, is really deeply offensive. Not just to Chinese, not just to people in the global South, but to a heck of a lot of Americans as well.
He's speaking to his audience. He's speaking to his core MAGA audience, which is why you see a certain pattern to those phrases. But do you think his electorate or the constituency to which he is speaking, and by he I mean some of the other commentary as well, are they buying some of this positioning, posturing narrative?
Well, it depends on what you mean by the posturing narrative. If it's that China is America's principal competitor and adversary and maybe even enemy, I think there are a lot of Americans who buy that. And there's some justification to that. I mean, the rise of China and is a thing. It's real. But the way in which he has framed it to appeal to not just the domestic MAGA audience, but also to Donald Trump himself. I mean, that's the scary bit. He's clearly trying to curry, if I can use that phrase, curry favor with certain constituencies, both up the food chain from him, the president, and down the food chain from him, the broader MAGA movement. It's a scary symbol of the times in which we live, that anybody could say things like that publicly and not be excoriated and marginalized for it. It's almost unbelievable, except it's only too believable.
You're saying that someone may not be, or someone should be, or is not being marginalized is questionable, but the fact is it's actually being celebrated, or at least that's what it looks like, isn't it?
Yes. If I said those words on my college campus, I would be, my professional life would be over, for good reason. You don't say things like that. And it's not just in polite company. You just don't say things like that, period. Unless you want to appeal to these two constituencies, Donald Trump himself and the MAGA movement more broadly. And that's a very frightening thing for me to see, that he would deliberately, a smart guy, nobody could say that JD Vance is an idiot. He's a smart guy, and he's deliberately pushing certain buttons, and it's working.
Do you
and
think,
that's the scary piece.
The vice president is a very smart thinking individual, and there's not even a debate on that. But the fact is that, do you think this could actually have larger diplomatic ramifications? Because these are racial slurs. You are actually pushing a certain stereotype, isn't it? That and that's why, the phrase is Chinese peasants, because you're sort of pushing a certain stereotype of Chinese. And do you think it could have larger diplomatic ramifications?
Well, I'm not sure if it has larger, but it's a reflection of a bigger dynamic, which is this competition and conflict between the United States and the People's Republic of China. And it's not just those two countries. Obviously, India has been in the crosshairs for a long time, and President Trump calls it the tariff king, for example. It's a different way of thinking about the global political economy. It used to be, since 1945, but certainly since 1991, that we were talking about free trade and globalization and neoliberalism and all of those things, which have got their pluses and minuses. But now we're talking about a trade war, basically. Mm-hmm. The U.S. versus China, the U.S. versus India, the U.S. versus Canada and Mexico. Can you believe that? That's madness. We're in a different geopolitical era, and JD Vance and President Trump and the MAGA movement are a crystallization of that moment. And it's not good.
All right, Andrew, let's leave it there. Thanks so much for joining me on India Global today. Well, viewers, bottom line really is that JD Vance built his political career on playing to the working class crowd. And he now finds himself embroiled in controversy after belittling an entire nation and its people. While this outburst echoes his, well, some would say reckless rhetoric, the irony is undeniable. The self-proclaimed champion of the American working class dares to insult the very people who've turned their country into an economic powerhouse. JD Vance's comments are not only an embarrassment to the US, some would say, but a clear sign of how he may be out of touch with the model world. This is a man who seems more interested in stoking division than understanding complexities. JD Vance, your words do have consequences, and there will be backlash. From racial slurs to ridicule, from Hexit to Vance to Trump himself. Will bloated egos and a loose tongue make America great again? That's the question, viewers, I leave you with.